So, guys, we got Ike Lightner from Ike's Exotics and Aquatics. He's here. He's a rainbow boa guy. He's actually got a bunch of crazy things and parrots and goats and all different sorts of stuff. So, you guys are going to want to stay tuned for this one. All right. So Dave's going to be a little quiet on this one, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to try to get some more words in than him. And so, Ike, how did it all start for you? Like reptiles, like how did you get into it from the beginning? Tell us the whole story.
All right, the whole story. So basically, I was born as an animal lover. It's just in your blood. You either have it or you don't. And I definitely think that I was given that gene from birth. So when I was younger, parents were pretty supportive of pretty much all my animal stuff. But the one animal that they, of course, said I couldn't have was a snake.
Yeah.
So, you know, that leads you into having hundreds of snakes as an adult. Started out with everything else that they would let me keep when I was younger, and I had frogs and lizards and turtles and pretty much everything I could find. But then about maybe 12, 14 years old, I started thinking more about actually breeding reptiles and started breeding some basic stuff like leopard geckos. Got kind of my first experience with some of the genes and how the recessive genes work and all that sort of thing. And then just started kind of getting more serious about wanting a snake. My first snake that I ever actually kept was a spotted python. And I was lucky because I am here in Missouri. There's not very many reptile keepers, but I actually lived really close to Dennis Harder, which he had a business called the Findlay Valley Serpentarium. Before that, it was actually called Snakes Alive, Ozark, Missouri area. Mm-hmm. He was actually more of a venomous keeper, which hasn't been my thing, but he was still a mentor to me and gave me a lot of good guidance and gave me somebody to look up to locally in the reptile community. And that was pretty much really, to me, that was just like the pinnacle of a reptile collection. I wanted to do something like that. And I just kind of focused on how I could make it happen. And I was 18 and I got my first rainbow boa. So I was out of my parents' house. I was in college and decided I was going to start focusing on breeding snakes. And at the time, another Missouri reptile keeper, which I know you guys knew very well, Ben Rennick, was getting big and getting popular. And he was someone that I really started looking up to as well. And I remember having some conversations with him when I first started breeding. I had my first litter in 2010. So I really was just getting into it and ran into Ben at some local shows and talked to him about how he grew his collection and how he got to the point that he was producing hundreds, maybe thousands of snakes in a season. And he really just told me dedication and, gradually getting bigger, not trying to do it all in 1 year. And I've just been plugging away at it ever since. I've really tried to focus on Brazilian rainbow boas. I think that was one of the things that helped me get somewhere. You know, if I would have just picked up one of this and one of that and every snake that I thought was cool looking, I doubt I would have made any progress over the years. But instead, I actually really focused straight on rainbow boas. And I think that's really helped me a lot. It helped me, I had to get my first litter, and then I start growing the collection a little bit and adding a few more females, adding a few morphs, but really focusing on Brazilian rainbow boas. And that's, I think, what differentiated me from a lot of people. When I first started getting into the Brazilians, there weren't very many people breeding them. Dave Calling, Jeff Clark, there was a few people, but it wasn't very many. And I just saw it as an opportunity. These guys had some cool snakes. I wanted to be like them. And I started holding back babies from each litter and just focusing on growing my operation.
Yeah.
So you guys still with me here?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So Dave does a lot of boas, and he's a big boa guy. And so I'm going to show a picture of a rainbow boa, a baby. So some of the stuff. One of the reasons that we had you on, and we've talked before, in the past, but I saw some of your pictures online. The Reptile Report was sharing some of your really, really red rainbow boas, like unbelievable looking. So how did you go? So a lot of people have trouble breeding rainbow boas. How did you go about breeding for the red, like these really bright red rainbow boas? Maybe I'm talking out of school, but
no, that's I think that's a great question because a lot of people, the red Brazilians are in high demand. Everybody wants them. I really can't produce enough right now. But the way I really started with focusing my projects on the high colored stuff was just buying the nicest couple high red Brazilians I could find. And it took a few years, honestly. It wasn't something that I could just go out and buy. I had to network with the right people. I had to find the right breeders, and then I had to wait on their waiting lists, even sometimes for years. Then a lot of times they still wouldn't have what I wanted, and I just have to beg them and bug them, and sometimes I'd finally get one, and then so I probably built my collection off of just maybe 3 males and 3 females at first. But then when I started having litters, I quickly realized there was 1 or 2 or 3 in each litter that were above and beyond the parents. And so, those were my holdbacks. That's what I started focusing on, was producing nicer stuff than I could actually purchase. And I started with unrelated bloodlines. That helped, I think, a lot. And I just started producing 1, 2, 3 litters a year, and saving my nicest couple males and my nicest 4 or 5 females, and just started growing. And somehow, I don't know, it just kind of worked out well. I wanted reds. I was trying to buy high reds and high colored stuff, and then I started seeing some progress, and I just got into it, and that's just kind of what I've been doing. Now, at this point, some of those reds that you just showed, those are like 3 generations in since I started breeding them. And the people that produced those original founders for me, they were probably already 5 generations in from wild caught. So we're talking about 8, maybe even 10 generations in, selectively bred for color. And so, it's definitely, we're seeing progress. We're seeing nicer stuff. We're seeing babies that color up faster, babies that hold their color longer, and just really getting somewhere on those really bright reds. And that's, I like the morphs too. I like all the colors, but if I had to pick one snake, it would be a bright, normal, high red Brazilian. And people love to say, when I'll post up a morph, and that everybody says, "Oh, normal Brazilians are better. We're all about the reds. We're all about the oranges. Nothing beats a normal." And I think that's great. It's better than with my Colombian rainbow boas. People don't even look at the normals. So it's kind of fun to have a snake that I breed that the normals are in just as high a demand as some of the cool color morphs. Yeah.
So, as we get into, we want to know more about, and we'll go into like the 101 stuff. So, if you can tell us, how are you so successful breeding rainbow boas? Like, what are the temperatures? What do you feed them? How often do you feed them? What do you do to make them breed? Like, if you can go through just a real quick rundown of, and it doesn't have to be real quick, but in detail, so people can understand and maybe be successful themselves,
Absolutely. For me, I think this just happens to be boas in general. You can't power feed them. You can't push them too much. You can't really try to breed them when they're too young. And so that's where my foundation and experience lies, is with boas. Makes sense to me. It's worked for me. I don't try to power feed. I try to really go slow and steady and conservative with my feeding. And I think that has really been one of the keys that has been good for me. So, along that line, I don't even try to breed a female until she's 4 years old, sometimes even 5 years old for her first breeding season. And I think that's made the biggest impact on my success. If I was trying to breed females that are 3 years old, I might occasionally have some successful litters. They'd be smaller. Babies would probably be more of a pain to get started. And I think it would be harder on the females. And so I really think that's a key component. I go slow and steady. I give them all the time they need to be mature. And then as far as what I do to actually trigger breeding, I do start to feed a little bit heavier in the late summer to fall. And I start a cooling period where I drop my nighttime temperatures. Typically where I'm at in the Midwest, winter's just starting to knock on our door here. It's going to be another month or two before I start even cooling my rainbow boas. Usually by the end of November, the start of December, I'm starting a nighttime cooling period. Mm-hmm. So up from maybe July to November, I'm feeding a little bit heavier. But when I say a little bit heavier, that's still just maybe feeding a female every 10 to 14 days rather than 14 to 21 days. It's not multiple feeders at one time. It's not bigger feeders. It's just maybe a little bit more frequent on the food. And then I start my cooling period, and I go pretty gradual. Drop my nighttime lows. I start pretty conservative on that too. I just maybe drop them 8-10 degrees at night for 6 to 8 hours at first. And I do that for a few weeks. And then I continue until I get my nighttime period down to more like 10 to 12 hours and room temperature. So for me, I try to keep my hot spots on my Brazilians at 85 degrees on the warm end. And so then when I'm cooling them, they're going to have no heat for up to 12 hours. That'll put them around 68 to 70 degrees, which is my ambient temperatures during the winter. And it's important to note that I do give them daytime temperatures always the same. I use Herp thermostats. They're very easy to do the night drops and program everything in. And I continue feeding. I don't really slow down much on the feeding for the females especially until I start to see a lot of lockups and a lot of breeding activity. Typically, I cool them for about 6 to 8 weeks. And then in January, mid-January to February time, I start to increase the temps again, warm them back up. And I continue to leave my males in with the females. I will separate occasionally for a quick feed, digest, and then straight back in with the females. And I do that on and off until I'm sure the females are gravid. And sometimes that may be April, even May, before I'm pulling the males out for good. And then typically I will see litters as early as June with my Brazilians, but more likely July, August, September are my main months for Brazilians to be born. And as far as go ahead,
what size food do you feed an adult?
Adults get medium rats with me. And that's for a male or female. I just feed my males a little bit less often, but they both get medium rats. And I like to see a lump in any of my Brazilians when I'm raising them up. I do like to see a noticeable lump when I feed them, but nothing crazy. It's true that Brazilians are not the best at digesting their meals. So, you do have to be careful. You can't just, my jungle carpet pythons, I feel like I can feed them anything and they're going to digest and not have any issues and they can just burn right through it. But with my Brazilians, I have to be much more conservative. And I don't even start them out on hopper mice. Some people do, and they get away with it. But I start them out on fuzzy mice, and I like to let them get some good meals in them before I even think about bumping up the meal size, because I just don't want to deal with regurges. I think it's just too hard on them, and it's not worth it. So I just go slow and steady and conservative. I've noticed if I do the slow and steady kind of conservative feeding for the first few years of their lives, then I can really start bumping up the meal size, and they have no issue whatsoever. It's just getting through that first year of when they're fragile little babies that they can sometimes puke on you, and that's just never fun to deal with.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk about the different morphs you have?
Yeah. Okay, so Brazilian rainbows, there's not a ton of morphs out there, actually. There's just a handful of them. There's a few pattern morphs, a few color mutations. That's really it. I'm working with a couple different strains of Anery. They really don't get me that excited, I'll be honest. The Anery Brazilians, they're just kind of brown. It's just not my thing. I like the colors. I like the brighter stuff. So I have hypos, the hypomelanistic morph. It's a recessive gene. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, one of the prettiest snakes that I keep. What you're showing on the screen there is actually a Anery Colombian rainbow boa. Some people call those ghosts. And it's a kind of a silver mutation. A lot of people like to debate about those, whether or not it's Anery gene or something else. I call them ghosts just because that's the original name. The person that produced that morph called them. More people that are scientific about this call them Anery. So that's the deal with those. The hypos, though, on the Brazilians, the hypos are like an orange, kind of a yellowish, orangish, bright snake. And they're just gorgeous. And they've been around for quite a while. That's actually just a normal that you're showing there, though. That's a really high-colored normal.
This shows you how much I know about rainbow boas, really. I mean, really.
Get your shit together, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the hypos, they don't have quite as black of outlines to their pattern. It's a little bit lighter, but then like a brighter neon kind of color to them. And it's a cool morph. I produce them every year. I love them. They're really a great snake. And I don't know. Then beyond hypo, we of course got albinos. That's a new morph that has just really started to hit the scene in the last few years. There's T-negative albinos and T-positive albinos. I've now produced 3 litters of the T-negative albinos, and they're really hard to beat. I mean, that's a hypo right there. You found the hypo.
Yeah, it was taking me a minute.
So you got T-negative albinos. They're, of course, the ones that have the red eyes and the whites and oranges and pinks kind of to their color. And then you have T-positive albinos, also known as caramel albino. And they're both great. They're just different. The red eyes really draws me in on the albinos. I like all albinos of every species. So that's a real exciting project that we're working on. And actually, there's a lot of room to advance that albino gene. Right now, the original head albinos are basically very normal looking. They look like wild caught Brazilians. They've not been bred to any of the high colored bloodlines, and they haven't been crossed to hardly any of the other morphs. So it's really at the ground level with the albino, and I think there's going to be a lot of exciting projects in the coming years. I think one of my first goals with my albinos is just to breed it to the high reds and make a bunch of really high-colored het albinos. I think everybody's going to want those. I'm going to want to keep them all. They're really going to be awesome. Then the caramel albinos, I'm about a year or 2 away from producing some of those. That morph actually popped up in Europe, and it's just starting to trickle into the U.S. over the last few years. It's been kind of a weak gene. Some people have had troubles raising them up, and so there's been a couple litters in the U.S., but not much success yet. I've got a group of hets. I've got a visual caramel male, and we'll see what we can do. I'm hoping to be able to get some babies from that project. Another morph that I'm working with really doesn't even have a name yet. It's called, people know it as the Blackie Project. That's what I've been calling it, the Blackie Project. And it's been 7 years that I've been working on that project, and I just had my first litter from the Blackie Project this summer. So some of you guys probably know Nick Helbel. He started the company Reptilinks.
Yep.
Good friend of mine that he helped me get this project originally back in 2013 when it first popped up. Talked to the guy. He was located up in Michigan near Nick Helbel, and he didn't know how to ship, but he had this cool litter. It was supposed to be all red Brazilians, and there was 2 really dark ones in the litter. Didn't look anything like Anerys. I don't think they're Anerys. If it's an Anery gene, it's not any of the typical ones that we've seen so far. It's much darker. It's basically black. It doesn't really brown out as an adult. It stays dark. It has colorful side markings. We don't know how this gene actually passes on yet, unfortunately. But we did get our first litter. This was my male Blackie, that's the dark male, bred to a normal looking litter mate of his. And so that's, my horrible pictures, but you can see that's one of the babies from this year. And they actually darken up. They don't lighten up as they grow up. They get darker. That was maybe just a week or two old when that picture was taken, and they're actually darker now. Really exciting. I don't have a clue exactly, because if we would have bred Blackie to a unrelated female, we'd probably be a little bit closer at knowing how the gene works. But since we bred it to a litter mate, it could still be the recessive gene. She happened to be a het, or, it could be a dominant gene. And we'll figure that out soon. But it took us a few years to finally get a litter from Blackie. And I've got lots of plans for him. And we'll just have to see what comes of that. But it's a really exciting project, and one that I'm really happy to have. So I guess while we're on the morph subject, though, I'll talk a little bit more just about, pattern morphs in Brazilian rainbow boas. And there's a lot kind of just starting to hit the scene on that as well. There's some stripe projects. Then there's the pattern markings along the side of the Brazilian rainbow boas. A lot of us refer to those as crescents. Kind of looks like a upside down U with an little orange dash on it there. Black little circle ball, eyeball looking thing. So we call those crescents. There's a mutation of the crescents called a pearl mutation. And that's where the center marking is just a big orange circle rather than the black marking. And then there's a bunch of different pattern mutations that are just kind of popping up. We actually had one that popped up this summer unexpectedly in one of our litters. And I don't even know. I'm not good with naming things. I don't know what you'd call it. Hopefully we'll produce more and then we can talk about a name for it. But basically just really funky patterns on the sides. Kind of gives it like some people have described it as like a cheetah print pattern or waves, or I don't know exactly what you call it. But it's a neat looking morph. It's definitely unique. And, there's a bunch of that kind of stuff popping up. The more people that are breeding Brazilians, and it seems to happen a lot now. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, you definitely have a lot of Brazilian stuff going on. Dave, do you have any questions? We'll give
I'm going to text them over to you so he can hear them.
Okay. So I know, how's the market been? Obviously with the bright stuff, the market's been pretty good. How do you see the market going in the next few years?
Oh, it's really been amazing. I've seen nothing but growth from rainbow boas. When I first got my first Brazilian in 2006, they were selling for like $100 each. People couldn't even hardly sell them. They really weren't in demand. Everybody thought they were some snappy snake you can't hold. It'll bite you. They weren't that colorful. A lot of things weren't going for them yet. Now, it's been night and day difference. The same bloodlines that were selling for $100 back then are selling for $300-400 each now. And people are lining up to purchase them. It's not necessarily all the morphs. The high-colored normals are the biggest in demand that I see out there. And I don't think it's going to let up anytime soon. I think that people are looking for something a little more unique, something that's not as common. And there's a lot of people planning on producing Brazilian rainbow boas for a long time coming. So I don't see this bubble bursting anytime soon. I think it's a great species to work with. It's going to be a good investment for a lot of people. I really believe that.
I don't think that you're wrong. I think that's a good deal. I think that even the reds that you're producing right now are so eye catching. It's just I think that when people start to get into them and they start to realize the different morphs and things like that, I think that people will really start to like to keep them. Obviously, as a rainbow boa, it's fairly easy to keep. And I think that it's fun. It's a fun animal. When people start to realize this food cycling like you do, and we had Vin Russo on, like we've talked about in the past. I think that when people start to realize it's not a ball python, you can't feed it once a week and then hope that in a year you're breeding it, or whatever. Some people think that you can do that, but I think people will start to get better and better at keeping them, and I think that market's going to take off.
Yeah, and actually, what you mentioned there, I'd like to tag on and just say, people get the wrong idea about rainbow boas when they read about them or hear about them from people that aren't too experienced with them. They think they're very delicate, sensitive, hard to care for, and it really couldn't be further from the truth. I think they got a bad name originally when there was a lot of imports coming in. They were unhealthy. They were wild-caught adults. People were keeping them way too hot. And, those things have been worked out. We've got captive bloodlines. We figured out the right temperatures to keep them at, and they're not difficult whatsoever. They're actually really easy to work with.
Yeah, so I think that you're right. I think that there's a misconception there, like you're saying. So with the darky or blacky one that you're saying, the dark stuff, do you plan on breeding it to anery to try to make it an even darker animal?
That's a good question. I don't know. Right now, I just want to make more of them and figure out exactly how the gene works, and then I probably would like to cross it to just about every morph in my collection.
Yeah. I mean, you're really on the ground level. You're thinking about doing maybe into albino as well?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you want to do it to everything. What's your next plan? Like, since you're on the ground level, what is, what's your plan outside of just making more?
Yeah, I do think crossing it to both strains of albino is going to be awesome. Same with hypos. I think all three of those are going to be just dripping with color if you can get a visual blacky version of whichever one of those morphs you want. So I do think that's going to be awesome. So yeah, I think, I'm lucky that my male is actually finally a breeder, I guess. And I've got albino female that's about a year or two away from breeding. So there's a decent chance that I might put the blacky male in with her. I think it's going to be an exciting couple years. We'll see. I do think all those morphs will be improved by crossing them into the Blackie project.
I'm trying to picture, like, it's hard to, obviously, since you're on the ground level, it's hard to picture them, what they could look like, like, I mean, you would have a better idea than I would, but I agree that the hypo is probably going to be awesome looking.
Yeah, I just think anything, it's just like crossing anything that gives more color to it, and then you take away the dark pigments with the albino gene, and it's just, I think it's going to be just basically a bright orange albino with red eyes. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it could make the pigment, the black pigment, add in and make it more pinks. Like, have a lot more pink in it in the albino.
I think you're right. Definitely.
So for anybody who's listening, Dave's a little bit quiet, more so because of we're having a little technical difficulty, and he's texting me questions. I'm definitely not this smart, not as smart as Dave is in with boas and things like that. But so, all right. Well, what other? I know you keep a lot of animals. I like keeping with the rainbow stuff, but what, if people look on your Instagram and things like that, obviously they'll see the barnyard of animals that you got going. But also you have like I saw a green anaconda. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you have, your emerald tree boas and things like that. What's your next snake like that you're really focusing on?
Well, it's kind of funny because my goals have always been for years, I'm going to get into the emerald tree boas. I'm going to get a bunch of basins someday, and I'm going to breed them all, and I'm going to just love it. I started out with northern emerald tree boas, and, it hasn't gone so well. I'll be the first to admit. I actually bought captive bred babies. Thought I was doing it all right, the long, slow way, and they have been nothing but a pain in the ass. So then, I'm starting to realize maybe I don't need 20, 30 emeralds. Maybe I just need a few as like a pet project. But the basins have gone better for me, I will say. I really love the basins. I don't think there's much prettier snake out there in the world. Of course, I like the solid white stripe connecting all the way down the back. Some of the basins that I have some of the dark pigments kind of coming into the green, and I think they're gorgeous. They're also many generations captive bred at this point in the U.S., so they're healthier, hardier. They're rare and kind of expensive, but so far, from what I've seen, the basins are worth the investment. They're going to take probably 7 years for my pair to really be ready to go, but
Wow.
I'm really excited, and I think it'll be worth it. Like that's one project that I am very amped up for, but just my bad luck with the northern babies just kind of put a little bad taste in my mouth. But funny enough, while always focusing on emeralds, green tree pythons just kind of, I didn't really care that much about them. I wasn't that excited about them, but more people are producing them, and I got my hands on a few, and things have gone great with them. And I've been building my collection of green tree pythons more so than even thinking about my emeralds.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's weird. A lot of people talk about chondros being so delicate and finicky, and they'll break your heart, and every snake can do that. But I've had great luck, knock on wood. I've got about a dozen chondros in my collection now, and they're great feeders. They never have any problems digesting their meals. They grow well. They seem to be easy to care for, in my opinion. Now, all mine are captive bred, so, they're not imports. I started with healthy stock, but I'm impressed with them. I really like them. I like the variety. I like yellow neonates. I like red neonates. I love the blues that you see on them. And I think I'm happy to be working on the green tree project. And really, I think that's going to be one of my main focuses in the coming years.
So you were talking about starting the chondros, and we can get back into.
Okay. So basically, I just think that people are too impatient. That's really the bottom line. And scared of hurting baby chondros because they're fragile, delicate little shits, and they are. But you got to give them time, give them a month after they hatch out, before you even think about food, really. That's in my opinion. And then you can't be scared to slap them in the face with that pinky mouse. And, it really is. One species in particular that I've found that needs to be tease fed, needs a little tease feeding, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember who it was at this point, but I was reading some old timer chondro guys talk about how to get babies started, and one of them was saying, you got to slap them in the face with that meal. And then somebody else, I think it may have been Rico, that said, well, somebody said, how do you know when it's too hard or if you're being too aggressive? And Rico said, you have to literally kill one first by slapping it too hard to figure out where the line is, because you have to get to the point of almost killing it with that food. And then they finally just eat. It's crazy. I know it sounds crazy. They're fragile little snakes, but you do have to really kind of make them mad. And that's worked for me. So far, I haven't had many problems with getting them to feed. Ironically enough, I've had more problems with leucistic Colombian rainbow boas than I have had with chondros getting babies to feed.
Huh.
That's interesting. So slapping them in the face. I mean, slapping me in the face with food usually works too. But generally, you don't have to try hard to get me to eat.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I tried I've done a little bit of scenting with like chick down or something. I think I've even maybe used a little bit of lizard scent before, but I didn't notice any real benefit to any of that. I think to me it was just getting a little more aggressive with it and tease feeding, making sure I'm also big on feeding at night. I think a lot of these snakes that are nocturnal, you feed after dark. You don't turn on a bunch of bright lights when doing it, and I have much better success rate.
That's pretty good, actually. I haven't heard anybody say that, to turn off the lights, and do it in the dark. That's pretty good. Dave, do you have any more questions? You want to try this?
I'm just gonna listen. I think I'm gonna relay some shit to you. I'll keep on typing it over, but I mean, you can't hear anything I'm saying right now.
Oh, I can hear you fine.
Can you? What the fuck? No, the chondro thing's interesting. Honestly, I don't think it's being overly aggressive, kind of bopping them a little bit. I mean, honestly, a pinky is nothing but slime and gush anyways. I mean, you can hit it pretty hard and it's like it's going to leave a mark on a snake. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. We do the same thing with some of the species we work with. A lot of times I feed in the building from like 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning because I get a better feeding response at night than I do in the daytime, regardless of the lights being on or off.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, so my first chondro that I ever got is kind of cool to me. Has some sentimental value because it was actually traced back to the parents Ben Rennick owned originally. And so I just thought that's really cool. I've always looked up to him, and it just really, he was, I know you guys knew him well, but he was a amazing breeder. He did everything like to the max, and it was pretty cool to me to just get something that he had produced.
Yeah, no, Ben was always a great guy. He was everybody's best friend. He took everybody's phone calls. Very knowledgeable. Had a lot more to give in the hobby. The guy would have wrote books if given the opportunity. Like I said, still a tragedy to this day. But no, and I make the joke a lot too since I've been working with Ben's collection that when you produce a ball python, you don't know what the fuck it is. You send a picture to Ben and he tells you what you have. Now people are asking me those questions and I'm half a retard. I know, but I don't know all the time. I'm still trying to break this stuff down.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how you guys do it with all the different morphs you're working with on the ball pythons. That's a whole nother world.
Oh, it's too much. You really are. It's kind of nice that you have limited mutations in Brazilian rainbow boas because, like you said, you're going to put more of your time and attention into line breeding these projects. More simple crosses, not going for some 3 to 4 to 5 gene stacked animal. Really just refining what you already have, and I really do appreciate that in a lot of species.
Yeah, it's fun, I can't imagine if I had like 5 genes stacked up in one snake, I'd be lost.
Yeah. But so talking Brazilians before, now you also breed Colombians. How much different is the breeding with your Colombians versus your Brazilian rainbow boas?
Absolutely none. They're basically identical. I breed them at the same time of the year. I feed them the same way. I cool them the same way. The only difference I really see is that the Colombians are typically born about a month earlier in my care. So I usually see Colombians born in May and June, and then the Brazilians start. So that's about it. Overall, the Colombians have been easy to work with. They're a little bit more hardy probably than Brazilians. They don't need quite as specific temperature requirements, and they're not quite as concerned with high humidity. It's still good for them though, and the babies are usually really easy to start. But I mentioned earlier, I've had problems with the leucistic Colombian project with getting babies started, and I think that's just probably goes back to, I assume that my hets and my Lucy male, they probably just were stubborn feeders as babies. Outback Reptiles probably force fed them and then sold them to me, and I've just been having to deal with that. So I'd say probably 60% of my babies from that project are good feeders, and the other 40%, they're just the biggest pain in the neck ever. And I don't always have the patience to force feed snakes, and I usually I don't even know that I think it's a good thing to do because I don't want them to be passed around in the hobby and bred, and I don't think that we need to have a bunch more stubborn feeding Colombians out there. So, you can only find so many pet-only homes for those snakes, but that's what I try to do. And other than that project, though, every Colombian rainbow boa that I've ever had as a baby has been easy to feed, great feeders. So it's something to do with that project in particular. And I am trying to raise up some good feeders, and I'm going to try to breed that problem out of it eventually.
Okay. I mean, when you have a failed to thrive animal, I mean, we all try to keep it going, and a lot of times I think that's money driven. You keep it alive, keep it fed enough, you have an opportunity to sell it. But you're definitely right. Those animals may not thrive in a new environment. That is something that I think is inheritable. I think trouble feeding is something that you find that can be passed on generation to generation. But no one's really ever done the research on it, though. It's all here, word of mouth, suspicion, but none of us really know for sure.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see. I've got a few that I'm raising up, and if I get some litters where all the babies eat good from those projects, then I'll be pretty convinced that it's an inheritable gene.
Oh yeah. Now with going back to Brazilians, I missed the entire Brazilian conversation. I'm a big fan of some of the stripe projects. Now, is that something that you're working with yet? I think Rainbows R Us had some of the first designer stripes, if I remember right.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't focused much on the pattern mutation, and I don't know. It's just I'm in the color game. I really like all the different colors. So I personally don't have as much of the pattern mutations. And actually, like I said, this year we did have a really neat male popped up in one of our litters that had a funky pattern. And I posted him up on the Brazilian Rainbow Boa page. Everybody went nuts for him. It actually almost annoyed me because I wanted them to be into my high colored stuff or my Blackie project or my albinos. They all just liked the pattern mutation. And so that's a new one that I actually gave to my friend to raise up because he's more into that type of stuff. He's excited about that project, and we're kind of working together on a few things. And so that one, it's going to be a cool project, and it just doesn't get me going quite as much as the colors. So gave that off to my friend to work with.
No, I get that. But, in all honesty, with some of the great stuff you've been doing with the Red Project, breeding a pattern into that and then still focusing on your color, you can really take it to the next level, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I need to sometimes remind myself that it's not only what I like. I need to think about what other people like. But, that's kind of what drives me in this hobby. I keep the snakes I like. I keep the species I like. And, that's worked for me so far. But I do sometimes think, I'm missing some potential. I originally, one of my first years of breeding Brazilians, I had a neat project that I had held back because it had this belly striping. And then I bred it back to its mother, and they produced some babies that had dorsal striping down the back. And, it was a missed opportunity because I was just focused on color and different mutations, and I didn't just sold the whole project off because they weren't colorful enough. And it was a missed opportunity. And somebody could have really ran with that one and no telling what they might have produced. So, it happens.
Yeah. Well, again, especially when it comes to a project, like you said, your females are taking anywhere from 4 to 6 years to get up to breeding size. It's definitely a species you cannot push hard. So to have something around that you're not overly passionate about when it comes to the appearance and then the amount of time and effort that's going to go into it, most of your projects for anything with a line bred trait with Brazilians could take you up to 12 to 14 years to get to anything, really.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, but go ahead, Ben.
No, I don't know. I was just, for some reason, I was thinking, Dave's going to make fun of me, but I was thinking, still, I can't get it out of my head thinking sardine oil with the chondros, and only because of Tiger King. I mean, I don't know why we haven't talked about Tiger King in a long time, but
yeah, we kind of buried Tiger King. We can still bring it up. I mean, it's definitely entertaining, but we need some significant news.
I think that ship has sailed.
I think that ship sailed.
What's funny is some people actually talk about using tuna juice, like canned tuna juice, as a scenting tool. Seems weird to me. I haven't ever really tried it, but you never know.
Some smaller pythons, hognose especially, the sardine oil, like we were saying, actually helps out a lot with some of those guys. It's a stronger aroma, gets the animal's attention a little bit more. But yeah, like you said, trouble animals, you can only put so much effort in, and then eventually, I hate to say it, you might have to throw in the towel. I mean, I love giving everything a fighting chance, but if it's got no fighting in it, what can you really do?
You can beat it in the face with some pinkies. I mean, that's what I've learned. That's what I'm
Slap
gonna
that.
Yeah. But yeah, so with all the other stuff you're working with, you know, the emeralds are always very fascinating. I've always been a fan of the emeralds. You know, going back to the Brazilians, because in my opinion, Brazilians can be a little more on the sensitive side. You can't get them too hot. They can dry out really fast on you. A lot of people do keep them on paper, but with a very large water bowl. Some people do cypress. How are you keeping your collection to keep your Brazilians healthy?
Yeah, so I do give every one of my Brazilians in my care gets a water bowl that's big enough to soak in, even all the way up to adults. And then when I'm keeping them in racks, I don't worry about giving a humid hide or anything like that because I'm able to keep humidity high just in my rack setup with limited ventilation and the big water bowl. I do keep all of mine on paper. So, you know, when you got 100 plus snakes, you just have to do something that's easy to clean and maintain. And for me, that works. I like to keep a really clean snake room and a clean setup, and I just don't like having moss and mulch and crap all over the floor and dust everywhere. Paper works better for me, and it works great. With my adults, I will keep them in 4x2 animal plastics enclosures, and so for those cages, I do use humid hide boxes, and that's just some damp sphagnum moss, you know, in like a Sterilite container or something with a hole cut in the lid, and I put that on the warm side of my cage. Put the water bowl kind of halfway in between the warm and the cool side, and that's it. They will hide under the paper. They will hide in the humid hide box. They'll soak in the water bowls, and that's really all. I have never measured humidity with any sort of a humid hydrometer or any sort of gauge for humidity. I really think it's actually overblown that people worry so much about specific humidity levels. If they're shedding okay, then I know it's good. And I'm not, for my adults, I'm not seeing like condensation constantly just dripping off the walls and off the front of the cages. There might be a little bit of condensation, but it's really probably drier than what people think. And I get great sheds and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, a properly hydrated animal, the humidity levels sometimes don't even play a factor. So fresh water and good hydration a lot of times will have an animal that's going to have good sheds, no problems. So I couldn't agree more with you on that. Again, I missed all that conversation earlier, so we're going to go back and dabble. The Darky Project. So the gentleman that you bought it from in Michigan, have they been able to reproduce another one from the same pairing, or did that just kind of disappear?
Well, actually, you know, I bugged the shit out of that guy for about 2 years to sell me those parents. And I finally thought I had him on board, and then he got sick, and basically his health declined really quickly, and his snakes were just kind of given away or sold or whatever, and nobody ever knows what happened to him, unfortunately.
Okay. So, what you have, so that is the first time that it's ever been reproduced outside the first litter. How many animals were you able to acquire from that? I know you said you have a visual male. Was it just 1 or 2 females?
Yeah, so it's a visual male, and then a normal-looking sibling female and a normal-looking sibling male. So it's really not ideal. I would have liked to have gotten at least 2 females. It was a really weird deal and kind of crazy, actually, how it worked out. But he didn't really even know what he was doing. He had this litter, and first off, they were sibling parents. They were 2 red sibling parents that he bred together. He didn't know how to sex the babies. He just had this litter with like 15 babies, and 2 of them were really dark, and that's all he knew. So I just got lucky that I stumbled upon it. Actually, the only thing I've ever bought off of Fauna Classifieds. And I found the project there, and it just worked the deal right away. I had Nick go pick them up because this guy didn't know how to ship them. And he was actually thinking that he was picking up a dark male and a female for me. Turned out that it was 2 males, 1 dark male, 1 normal male. So I figured that out about a month later when I finally got the snakes in my hand, and real big pain in the ass. Finally was able to get the guy to sell me the 1 other female that he had, and got the deal done and got that female in my hands. And so those are the 3 I have. And I just feel really lucky at all that I ended up with a female. I almost missed out entirely on getting that female. And so that's the one that produced this summer. And I think the only other person I know, I do know the person that ended up with the other dark one from the original litter. And he couldn't ever get it to switch over to frozen. It would only take live. He's never even gotten it up to an adult size. It's 7 years old and probably may never breed. So that's pretty much, I think I'm the only one with the project right now.
Interesting. A lot of times too, especially in boa constrictors, sizes and everything, age means a lot on these guys. So, even a smaller male with 7 years on him, I mean, he could be pumping sperm out down there. I mean, he could be worth putting on the right size female. Nothing too big, of course.
That's a good point. The guy that ended up with him, he's just kind of hasn't focused on breeding, I guess, and he doesn't want to sell. So it's kind of a dead end on that one right now.
Yeah, stand his ass until he decides to get rid of it to you one day. But okay, just kind of. Oh, Benjamin, your mouth's flapping. What do you got?
I had one question. Do you since you have the vision cages, do you use UVB or UV light?
Oh no, I actually don't have vision cages. I have animal plastics cages.
Oh, animal plastics. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't do any sort of lighting in any of my cages. I have ambient light that comes in through the windows from outside and gives them kind of a natural light cycle throughout the year. I don't even turn on any overhead lights during the day. I just go with the light coming in from outside. And, rainbow boas don't like a lot of light anyway, and they're nocturnal. So I don't worry about lighting at all for them.
Okay.
Well, let's jump into some other species. We could talk about Colombians, but, we are limited there. Talking mutations, you have your T-negative albino in those, the Ghost Project, like you said, the Anearthristic Project. I don't know if there was a patternless at one point with that one, but, you're still pretty limited in mutations for them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, actually, we don't need to talk about them for very long, but I do have this weird thing that keeps happening. People are pretty convinced that I've had 2 partho litters from my Colombians. And, I have an albino male that has tried to breed this one particular female twice, and both litters have been mainly slugs, a couple stillborn babies, and then 5 babies from one and 6 babies from the other. They have been all females, and they don't carry the markers that they should have for being het albino. And there's also been 2 patternless babies, and that mother was supposed to be possible het patternless. So it's really looking like it was a partho litter, and we've got a couple patternless babies that way.
And you had an opportunity to talk to Warren Booth about those.
I have not yet, but I've talked to other people that they're kind of into that stuff too. And, we might do some stuff eventually where we do some DNA tests on the shed skins and try to figure out for sure. But I'm pretty convinced with the patternless popping up and not having the het albino markers that should be there, plus having a low fertility rate in the litter. I think all that kind of leads towards it being partho.
Again, I couldn't agree with you more. We talked to Warren. We had a whole episode of Warren. We talked about partho on here. Most of my relationship with Warren over the years has been talking partho stuff. But, especially in boas and Colombians, not your Colombians, but, the manlier ones, we find that once we started once there was more mutations out there and suddenly we started doing our breeding and things just weren't making sense, like what you said, a patternless or 2 popping up. It seems extremely common in, I don't know if it's all boa species or most boa species, but partho litters are happening. And even William Philippak had another partho ball python clutch the other day. And by the other day, it was months ago, but it happened. I think he hit super blackheads in there. But no, the partho thing's a lot of fun. Not to discredit your buddies and all, but you should probably hit Warren Booth up about it. He loves these. You can send him some sheds in. He'll do it all for you and not ask for anything in return. Plus, there might not be any documented cases with Colombian rainbow boas with any parthos leading up to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably definitely worth getting it documented because I really am convinced that that's what's going on.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, go ahead.
No, I was just
Taking it in.
saying that we could get you connected to Warren Booth if you don't have his information or can't find him. He's on Facebook and things like that.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, I've seen his name come up a lot. He's like a PhD guy from Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, he's down in Oklahoma now. He was in Raleigh, North Carolina for years. That's how I met him. He was involved with US Ark in the very beginning. Really great guy, easy to talk to, and again, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But so kind of bouncing around, you know, you're saying you're a little bit excited about your emerald tree boa projects in the future, and what else do you have that's kind of keeping you excited about things that, you know, you're putting a little more attention into now than ever before?
Well, it's got to be anacondas for sure. I got my first green probably like 2013 or something like that. At the point that I got my first greens, they were just about to go onto the Lacey Act, and so I decided to get a pair. And I got one from Carl Herman that he was producing some back then. Got a couple here and there, and then they put them on the Lacey Act, of course. Then, so happened across my friend Zach Cox. He produced a clutch of yellow anacondas. He's out of the St. Louis area. And so at that time, they were on the Lacey Act, and they couldn't go ship across state lines. And so I got a pair from him for like a steal because nobody in Missouri wanted them, and he was selling them for cheap. And so now they, of course, have been removed from the Lacey Act, and we can ship across state lines again. And I hope that lasts for a number of years. I'm a little nervous that things might change on that. But I love them. They're just awesome snakes to me. The anacondas are just giant rainbow boas. I keep them very much the same that I keep rainbow boas, just bigger cages and bigger meals. And they've been, you guys, I know you guys have taken over or we're working with some of Ben's anacondas. I think you've loaned some off maybe to Megan now. But you guys probably know about how much of a pain in the ass they can be for feeding purposes.
To an extent. The T-positive albino, sometimes she'll take a rabbit, sometimes she wants rats. The big anearthristic female has always been a champ. Some of the males produced from the first albino, the double hats, have been, you know, the males can be a little off and on, but you know, it's kind of hit or miss with those guys. I just found that they were one of the messiest snakes I've ever worked with. The T-positive albino, you would clean her cage, walk away, and she would just immediately take a shit and fucking smear it everywhere, and you have to do it all over again. You couldn't go 5 minutes with a clean cage with those guys.
That's true. And I do the same thing with my anacondas that I do for my rainbow boas. They all have a water bowl that's big enough to soak in. So, yeah, that's a nightmare trying to keep those water bowls clean. And, you know, if there's one snake that can smell up my entire snake building, it's the anacondas. So they keep me on my toes. I've learned a lot from dealing with them because I've had some real long streaks of, you know, not being able to get a certain couple of mine to feed. And, you know, I've tried every trick under the book. I've just waited them out. You know, sometimes it's taken me almost a year before to get one to go back onto food. And then once they're back on food, they're eating like crazy. I think I've learned a lot from working with them. And I'm really excited to try to start breeding them. So I've got a pair of yellow anacondas that I'll try this year, and at least one green anaconda female that I plan to try to breed. And I don't need more than just a few anacondas, but I really like them. And they're just, to me, they keep me excited about my snakes. It's something rewarding about getting them to eat after they've really pissed you off for months not eating. It's just, it feels good when it finally works out. I really want to see a big litter of big fat green anaconda babies. I think that's going to be one of the coolest things that I probably will ever do in the reptile hobby. So I'm excited for that. I really am. And, you know, other than that, though, projects that get me really going, I've got the Bahamas boas. Some people call them Bimini boas. They're Chilobrothis strigulatus. I don't know. I'm not good with the scientific names. They're an awesome boa species, though, that's not very common in the hobby. And, of course, Jeff Murray, he's kind of the lead guy on those. And I've got a nice pair of those. They're going to be ready to breed next year. They're gorgeous snakes. They're a little bit bigger than my Rainbow Boas, actually. Maybe the same diameter, but a little bit longer. And they have a really nice like silver and black pattern to them. A lot of people look at my Bahamas boas and they think that they're actually carpet pythons when they see them. I guess the pattern and color is similar to some Darwin carpets, something like that. They're just unique. They're really tame. They're kind of a curious species. Like I get them out and they'll check you out. They'll crawl around, but they don't ever try to bite. They're the easiest to feed. They're very easy to keep. And so I think they're great. Supposedly they will have large litters. And of course the drawback to them is that they usually need lizards to get started. That's going to be a real pain in the neck trying to feed them anoles. But I think it'll be worth it once they're switched over to rodents again. And that's just something that I like that project. I'll kind of on the same line of other insular boas. I've always dreamt about getting into some Jamaican boas. That's one species that I still have never been able to get my hands on yet. And they are CITES 1 listing. So, they can't be sold across state lines. But they can be gifted across state lines, and they can be, loaned out for breeding purposes. They can be sold within whatever state they're bred in. I hope to get those someday. Tom Crutchfield, I've been begging him. I'm coming, Tom. Give me some Jamaican boas. I will return the favor tenfold. I'll give them out to other people. I will take great care of them. I will produce more. That's one species that I've really been bugging everybody about. So I had to throw that in there. Jamaican boas are on my list. I hear they smell. They musk a lot. I don't care. I'll deal with it. Hook me up with some Jamaican boas. Anybody that's listening to this. Okay. That's my little spiel there.
I might be mixing it up. The Jamaican, there was that really high calico that popped up years ago with that one, if I remember right, and that really made people start talking about them a lot more. Or was that that was something else? I might be mixing that
was
up.
The Dominican Red Mountain boa.
Dominican. As soon as I said that, I knew I fucked up.
Yeah. They're cool too, though. That's another island boa species, and that they really grew in popularity. Tom Crutchfield started breeding them, and a couple other guys, and then everybody wanted them. They're another snake that you have to start on lizards. Real pain getting them over to rodents. I have not worked with them, and I think that I'll get my fill of that just from Bahamas boas and those Jamaican boas that I someday get my hands on. But yeah, those are cool. I like all the more unique boa species that we don't see as often. And so there's a lot of different, they actually used to be considered a part of the Epicrotes family, a lot of those. But then they've since reclassified a lot of the Caribbean boas, the island species separately from the rainbow boas. But either way, they're very similar to me, and they remind me of rainbow boas, and that's what I like about them.
Interesting. And, jumping back to the Anacondas, one thing I wanted to say when you're talking about litter size, so the female anearthristic that Ben first got was, maybe she was as old as 12 or 13 years this past year where she finally had her first litter. Like 8 babies. She is massive. She can take me down. And even the T positive, her first year breeding at about 6 years old, had 4 babies, I believe it was. Yeah. I know Megan has been successful with some of her females that are on their like 3rd or 4th litter where you start getting into the mid to high 20s. But for an animal with that mass, you would think you'd be looking at a lot of babies, but those fuckers come out so big. Like, baby anacondas from big females are giants.
Yeah, and more people have been trying. I always just thought it was people are trying to breed them when they're half grown, basically. I've seen a bunch of these litters of like 5-10 babies popping up, and green anacondas are suddenly very valuable compared to what they used to be. So everybody wants to breed them now, and I just thought people were rushing. But you kind of think that it's more that it just takes these females a few litters to really build it up and be able to produce something bigger.
I think it's a building process for them. From what I've seen outside looking in, I mean, I've never personally bred them. I really just maintained them. Megan has done all the breeding for us for the last couple of years. It just made sense to put them in her hands. She's very knowledgeable, very trustworthy. A lot of what she learned was from Ben directly, and Ben, in my opinion, had a very good understanding of the species. He was really passionate about the anacondas. But yeah, everything I've seen so far in the industry with younger, not even young, 7-year-old or 8-year-old virgin females, very small litters. And again, that one girl, fuck man, that aneurystic female, I don't even know how. My face is kind of big, but this fucking snake was almost as wide as my hips in like its biggest area. The thing had literally 8 babies.
So how big is that? That female eats rabbits, I assume?
Oh yeah, she's eating huge rabbits.
Like 10-pound rabbits and stuff?
I think we're probably in the 7 to 10 pound range.
Okay.
But
and
it's a lot
you guys were keeping them in like 8-foot cages?
Yeah, she was in about an 8-foot cage, and she's in an 8-foot cage now. Some of the babies from her litter are going to be coming in this week, and I've got an idea of how we're going to set them up, but I really want to work on something in the future that even the bigger females have a water source that they can fully soak in. And talking to Mike's Monitors a few episodes ago and what they do with bathtubs, I'm probably going to come up with some kind of sink or bathtub idea for green anaconda cages, something that you can drain it really easily, clean it really easily. But I really believe that having that water in there is a must. It's just such a heavy animal. I just feel like that's a lot of stress on its body, laying on all that weight all day.
Yep.
So
I
that's
agree
just me.
100% on that.
And I've heard in the past, and it's not necessarily true, but with larger females and using smaller males to breed them, if you do have that water source, it makes it a whole lot easier for the male to get underneath their tail and lift it up compared to just breeding them on newspaper.
Wow. That's interesting. I can see that.
But either there. So what's the aquatic side of your business?
Oh, okay. That's the side of the business that doesn't make any money. I've just always been a reef keeper, saltwater aquarium reef tanks. So when I really started this business, I was more into reef tanks and stuff. It's a hobby that I love. I've grown a ton of coral and fragged a ton of coral and traded every coral under the sun. I bred clownfish a little bit. It's more of a hobby. It's not something that I see as like a lucrative business opportunity so much as I do snakes. And it's a lot of work. So like when I was in school, it was a great distraction for me to have my reef tanks, and I'd come home and do water changes and all my fragging of coral and all that stuff. It's fun. And I can really put together a nice reef tank, but you just have to drop a lot of money into them. And it just, to me, I don't see it as a very sustainable business unless you're going to raise like 100,000 clownfish in a factory style setup. What I like to do is it's just a hobby. So, it's got that little catchy ring, Ike's Exotics and Aquatics. At this point, really, I just have a snapping turtle. That's my only aquatic right now. And got a little school of cichlids that live in the tank with him, and that's it. So I'm not much on the aquatic side right now. I guess it's really Ike's Exotics now.
Okay, so false advertising is what you're saying. But clownfish too, man. Definitely the easiest fish to work with in saltwater, and that's another one with some very unique patterns and colors you can do through line breeding. Very unique fish. I fucking hate fish tanks. I don't think I'll ever want a fish tank, and I'm obsessed with fish and fishing. But if I was going to go something, I think I would just get a bunch of varieties of clownfish because, again, there's just so many unique looks out there right now.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy. There's a company, ORA with clownfish, and they're like you guys with ball pythons. They got every fucking morph under the sun.
Yeah. I'll check that out when I'm done on here because that actually really intrigues me. I've always really appreciated them. Even I don't know if you've gone to the aquarium in Springfield yet at Bass Pro, but they do have that one nice circular tank with the clownfish in it. I probably spent more time looking at that than most of their setups there.
I agree. They have a couple nice reefs there, actually. They have an SPS dominant tank that I heard that they were growing it for 6 or 7 years before they actually opened the aquarium to the public. And you can tell when you look at it, it's amazing.
Well, I think the whole process from beginning to end to build that aquarium up, I thought I said, was it like 10 years it took them to complete that project?
Yeah, it was incredible. Only someone like Johnny Morris and Bass Pro could pull that off.
Yeah, right? Fuck, it's beautiful though. I actually went there. So the first time I went there was like last year. I went there again like 4 months ago. Nobody was there. It was like just me. Walked in at my own pace. No one fucking with me. No one breathing on me. Just really chill.
When they first announced that they were opening, I strongly considered quitting my job and trying to get a job there. It's an awesome place, but I'm lucky that I have a day job that's not related to animals at all, and they put up with me doing things like reptile podcasts out of my office after hours, and I just couldn't leave this place behind. But I really strongly considered trying to be an animal keeper, and I'm also a diver, so I thought I could dive in their tanks and clean them and do all that. Still, someday I might have to fall back on that. We'll see.
Not for sure, but I mean, it's nice to be full-time in this hobby, but the stress that comes with it, bad years, like literally are crippling. To have a day job and still have the hobby that is still, of course, generating a second income really takes the stress off it and makes you appreciate it and enjoy it a lot more.
I think that's true. I've always thought about what if I ever really go 100% full-time in this, what it would be like. And, I think I could get by, but it just gives you the comfort level of having that steady paycheck. It just makes things easier.
No, couldn't agree more.
Besides, you get to hang up all these, like signs up on your wall, like plaques and things like that. You have hanging up behind you. When you first got on the podcast, I was like, I'm going to be moving into somewhere else soon, and I'm going to set up a different office so I won't have a weird curtain background. But I think I'm going to print up my own, certificates of stuff and put them in frames and just hang them around.
Hey, they can all be fake. Who cares? Nobody really looks at them.
Nah.
But Dave, so he also has parrots. Also does parrots.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about parrots.
Ike has some really good parrots, though.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So on this note, I have to give a quick shout out to my mentor that really got me. I mean, he to where I'm at today. I can't say it any other way. So this has been about 7 years ago now. I just randomly encountered this person, had some nice snakes. When they first told me the few snakes that they were keeping at the time, I almost didn't believe them because they were just like, well, I don't have very many snakes, but I have the most expensive 20 snakes that you can find. And I just thought they were full of it. And so then, I was just kind of taken aback, and I said, why don't you let me work with your rainbow boas? You have too fancy of rainbow boas for somebody that's not even breeding them, doesn't really even know how to breed them. And I just took a shot in the dark, and what do you know? It worked out. He told me that he would loan me some snakes, and we've been working together on things now ever since. And he's a veterinarian, so he's a busy person, and he's also got a large collection of parrots. So, to him, it's normal to send animals out on breeding loan. He does that a lot with his parrots, and we have really developed a great relationship. And I'm just lucky to have encountered him, become friends with him, and he's really taken me to a whole nother level. And the parrots go into that. I would have never had a parrot if it wasn't for him. I also would have never had the albino Brazilian project. I would have never had the black-headed pythons. I would have never had my herd of goats that I'm working with now.
Wow.
He's been a part of all of that. And so the parrots, he got me started with a couple pairs. It's been 2 years now that they've been in my care. We've got a pair of hyacinth macaws, a pair of Eclectus parrots, which it's a mutation, the blue mutation Eclectus parrots.
They're beautiful.
Incredible. I mean, I pinch myself every time I even look at them. It's really lucky that I'm working with them. I could not afford them. I'll straight up tell you that. So then we've got a pair of rose-breasted cockatoos, and the female is Lutino mutation. So kind of like an albino. And then we also have a pair of blue-headed macaws. And so it's just 4 pairs, but they are high-end parrots, and they are kind of the rare type of parrots. And it's been a whole new adventure for me. I'm still learning. We've had a couple of the rose-breasted cockatoo babies hatch, and there's the hyacinth macaws. So that pair of hyacinths, I have them in a big walk-in cage. They are 18 years old. My friend, my mentor, he raised them from babies. He had them for 16 years, and then he sent them to me, and I'm really just lucked into it. They have not successfully produced yet, but they're just getting into their breeding prime. You know, parrots live a long time. So they've started laying eggs. So far they've been infertile. But I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's a lot of work. Parrots are a lot of work. They're different than snakes. You feed them every day, and you don't feed them one frozen rat. You feed them fresh chopped fruits and vegetables and sprouted seeds and pellets and nuts. And, you know, you spend a lot of money on their food. You clean their cages all the time. Then when you finally hatch a baby, you hand feed the baby, and that's just even harder. It's a lot of dedication, and I can't imagine, you know, having a bunch of parrots and 4 pairs. That's enough for me. I love it. It's great. I just couldn't see it on a large scale. So I have a lot of fun. I don't know where it's going to take me. I hope that I can produce a bunch of babies, and we'll see. But, you know, thank you very much to my mentor, Ralph, for getting me into this position and letting me care for his birds. It's bottom line.
That's awesome. I mean, it really is an attractive bird. I just don't like when an animal can talk shit to me. I'm really just not a fan. So that's really my qualm. It's a personal thing. I still think they're beautiful, but it's more my self-esteem, if anything. But yeah, like you said, parrots, especially with the babies, how many, is it hourly or every other hour you have to hand feed them?
Every 2 hours. Yep.
Every 2 hours. Yeah, you got a little spot underneath your desk where you bring parrots to work?
Yes. Actually, my first rose-breasted cockatoo baby, I was smuggling it into my office for probably like 6 weeks when I hand fed that thing. And, you know, I was getting to work half an hour earlier than normal because I needed to sneak my little brooder into the office. And then, you know, I was staying later than normal. They thought I was just a hard-working employee, but really I was just feeding this parrot, and I was sleep deprived like crazy.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, like I said, I think, go ahead, Ben.
Once we're done with parrots, there was one other species that I remembered that you had them, but then I didn't think about it until you just mentioned them again. So I want to get on them. But once the parrot talk's done,
I'll be honest, you completely ruined the moment there. We can go ahead and move on now.
Well, black-headed
python,
buddy.
It's gone. So move the fuck on.
Well, it is a reptile. I mean, a lot of birds are, you know, that's the original reptile. But
we're the fuck about hour, man. We talk about whatever we want at this point. Just because we're not talking about food, you don't have to shut the conversation down.
Yeah, true. So black-headed pythons. So it's a species we want to work with. We have been very close to buying a few pairs, and we just haven't pulled the trigger yet on it. We will definitely, but you have a couple morphs too, right? So I saw a couple of your pictures. I mean,
yep.
So what are you working with the blackhead pythons?
Okay, so with the black-headed pythons, we've got both of the standard wild type, the eastern and western type. So one of them is more black and white type of a look, and one of them is more like a cream and brown tan kind of look. And then we do have the axanthic as well. Yeah. So we've got a pair of axanthics that are just coming up on ready to breed. So hopefully maybe this year we'll put them together. Definitely our male's ready. We may have to give the female one more year, but so we might try the male with a couple other females, some of our normal types. But I've got a group of it's just 9 blackheads. It's not a lot, but for me, it's enough. Yeah, they take a lot of space. They're kind of a dirty snake. They're piss all over their cage. They shit all over their cage. They're kind of difficult for me to feed. You don't want to feed them huge meals, but they still have to eat a lot. So, you're like feeding them weekly. And my big adults, I don't keep them big and fat like some people do. I've had success breeding them. And I keep them rather slender. I just feed like maybe medium-sized rats, really. Mostly medium-sized rats for my adults. My breeding females might get 2 or 3 rats at a time. But I don't like, they say that too much fat is really bad for them and hard on them. Sure. So I try to never feed them anything that would be really fatty, like an extra large rat, even though they could take it. I'd rather feed them just like 2 small rats that aren't going to be really fatty. And then when I cool them for breeding, I have a separate python room altogether, and it's mainly because of the blackheads. Now, I do produce a lot of jungle carpet pythons also, and I keep them in the same room because they can handle it and they do well. But really, the black-headed pythons, I've found I have to really cool them for breeding.
How cold?
As cold as like 50 degrees.
Okay, I didn't know that. I knew you cooled them. I did not know it was 50. 50's for real.
50's cold, and it freaked me out the first time I did it. I put them in that room and opened the windows to the outside. And in the wintertime here, it's 30 degrees at night, and that gets my room down to like 50 for them. And then I give them normal temps during the day. I mean, they have like hot spots of 90, 95 during the day. And so far it's worked great. I don't know what to tell you about feeding babies though. They're the biggest pain I've ever dealt with. I don't know how they do it in Australia. They must have some secrets, or they have better gene pools to work with. Mm-hmm. But I've had to force feed every single black-headed python that I've hatched.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common actually. So
from what I've heard, it's just, there has to be, some way to break the code, right? Like they survive in the wild somehow. I don't know. People say they like to eat reptiles in the wild. I can't even get mine to eat like stillborn snakes or anything like that. I haven't tried lizards, but I know other people have. I don't know what the answer is other than what's worked for me is just shoving some meals down their throat when they're young, and then after a couple weeks of that, they start eating. And that's about the best I know.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always liked the project. It was really cool to see, or the species I've always liked. Seeing the albino pop up last year again was really cool because it's been years since we saw that. Man, I think I saved every single picture from the K Brothers Facebook page in Australia back in the day. Like, I obsessed over their stuff.
Yeah.
So, no, definitely unique species. If I was ever to make the jump, I'd probably have to have the albinos at this point. I'm just a greedy motherfucker. But, yeah, definitely a very unique animal. And did they have a leucistic pop up in blackheads also in the last calendar year, I want to say?
In Australia, I believe so, yeah.
Thought so. But it was still weird looking. Like, it still had, like, maybe a little bit of pattern on its body, but it had a blue or black eye, if I remember right. Very odd-looking animal.
Yeah, and I think it was wild caught.
Oh, I'm sure.
They're awesome snakes. I feel like I'm talking negatively about them because I'm just being honest about my experience with them. But, they're great. They're cool. They're really impressive. People that don't know anything about snakes, they come see my collection and they like the blackheads, and that's one of their favorites. They just, they look at them and think it's cobra or something. They don't even know what it is. Mm-hmm. I like them. I really do. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. They're a great snake. I just don't. I don't know. They're not a snake I'd want to have too many of. That's, I guess, all I can really say about that.
We have one just to have it. I think they're really beautiful. I like having it around. Once you get over the fussy babies, I mean, the reality is once you get them past that, they're great feeders. They little extra time in the beginning to get them started.
Yeah, they are. I mean, whenever I feed all my adults, I just throw the feeder in like the corner of their cage, and I don't even try to find the snake or anything, they come out like a dog and just grab that food and drag it back to their cave. It's kind of crazy. They're
Nice.
great feeders.
I don't know what that was.
That was a peak.
That was your peak signal? You just peaked over there? You've never peaked before. I thought I peak.
I know. Well, I was thinking, I was trying to run through all the animals that Ike has, and this was supposed to be a rainbow boa more so talk, you know, but I do enjoy. I mean, seriously, if you guys are listening, go on Ike's pages. You know, it's Ike's Exotics and Aquatics on Instagram and Facebook. You really do have a wide variety of animals. How big is your? You said you have a building. How big is your building, and how many different areas do you keep animals in? Like different climates, I guess.
I've got about 3,000 square feet for the animals.
That's big.
And you know, I moved from where I was before to like I was in just cramped little spare bedrooms, a couple of them, to like having more space than I need now. But it's great because it allows me room to work, and I don't have to smash my head into cages every time I move. And so I basically have one large area that's for the boas. I've got all my rainbow boas, my anacondas, Bahamas boas, and arboreals. I've got green tree pythons in that area as well. That's all kind of one main area, and then the python room is off to the side on its own, so I can keep that at a different temperature when need be. And then I've got my parrots in a separate area, so I've really got three main areas, and then like an office and a quarantine area separate from all that. So, yeah, it's kind of how I do it. I know that, Dave, you guys live on a farm too, from what I've seen, and I'm starting a goat thing too. And I'm having a lot of fun with the goats.
Goats are awesome, man. I'll be honest, I don't know what the limit on goats is over here. Like, they keep having babies, we keep on keeping them. I love the fuck out of them, man. And like, we have a gator I drive around the property for garbage runs and so on and so forth. And, the babies are, most of the young ones have figured out how to get out of the fence. And when they see you coming in the gator, they start doing that crazy jump and they start swinging their head around and sideways bouncing. Nothing more satisfying than watching those guys run.
Yeah, it's fun.
So yeah, it's definitely a nice thing to have around. I mean, I do appreciate all the other animals, but there's something about the goats. They kind of take care of themselves. For everyone else kind of needs a little something. The goats just do goat shit and everything's cool.
Yeah, I love it. Being able, not worrying about temperatures, not worrying about, just a lot of different things I'm used to worrying about for my reptiles or the parrots or whatever. Goats, like you said, they're out there doing their thing, and if I don't have time to mess them for a couple days, they don't care.
No, couldn't agree more. Like I said, no limitation on how many goats I'm willing to have here. I'm just gonna put it out there. There's a lot of land out here. We can have a lot of goats.
Well, I'd like to see how far you really will take that.
Yeah, and honestly, so you're in Missouri, you said. What part of Missouri? Near the Ozarks?
Yeah, Springfield area.
You're not too far from me. I'm Fort Leonard Wood, or St. Roberts.
Yeah,
Rolla's like an hour from me, but no, we're right off the 44. Right, so literally, the military base is practically our backyard. Got bomber planes going over the property all day, helicopters, all happening right there.
And so you came to Missouri after Ben had passed?
Yeah, I got the phone call the morning after he passed away, and I guess there was just a list of names in case of an emergency, and essentially just kind of came out the next day and never left. I appreciate the state. Unfortunately, where I live, I can't play hockey anymore because there's no rinks, but I like Missouri. The herp in here is really amazing. I'm spending a lot more time outside now than ever before in my life.
Yeah, it's great. And I know you said you're a fisherman. I'm also a fisherman. There's a lot of good fishing around in this area.
I like that. Yeah, I finally got into some trout streams recently. So, you know, catfishing's good here. I like bass fishing, but I think a lot of my time is going to go into trout fishing now.
So you said that you've started to get into the trout fishing?
Well, I was a big trout fisherman in New York on the Great Lakes, the Niagara River. We do a lot of float rigs up there, center pinning. Not much for fly fishing, but you put me side by side with a fly fisherman while I'm doing center pinning, and I'll catch as many fish, if not more, as the fly fisherman. So I've recently been going out. There's an auction that we're doing about an hour and 20 minutes south of here. I usually drop Cheryl off at the auction. I found a little stream down the road on accident and throw in trout magnets on float rigs. I've been killing it down there. So I'll probably be heading back there in about, I think the last weekend of the month, I'll be back on that river fishing for a little bit. I've never seen anybody else fishing it. And the only reason I even caught one on accident is because I was herping. Herping was going horrible, so I threw a line in the water and I caught a trout on a Rapala. So, yeah.
So these are like wild trout?
Yeah, I believe it is wild. I thought there'd be some smallmouth bass or something else in this stream, but so far I've fished it 3 times, and all I'm doing is catching rainbow trout.
That's awesome. Well, you know, there's not a lot of wild trout streams here, and I know people keep those kind of close to the vest on where they're at. But I am a fly fisherman, and I love trout fishing. That's always been something I've been into. So, you ever want someone to go do some fishing with? Holler at me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm all about company. Like I said, I think the last weekend of the month was the next time I tried to hit that spot up. Pretty chill. Like I said, there's never any fishermen around. And it's a nice little walk. There's a couple points on the river where it gets a little deep and you got to get out and walk the shoreline through the brush. But it's an easy fish, honestly. I usually start at the top side and work my way down.
That's really cool.
But no, I'll get you involved in that. Just hit me up after the podcast on Facebook. I'll show you some of the pictures from last time, and I'll be all about bringing you out.
That's awesome, man. I definitely will.
No, for sure. But okay, well, now I've peaked. I know Ben peaked a couple minutes ago, but no, honestly, you know, really diverse collection, man. Like some really unique stuff going over there. A lot of stuff that I've always really appreciated. I'm like a lot of other guys. I want to work with everything, but I'm in a position where I'm really trying to just perfect what I'm working with right now. So I'm sure over the years I'll start dabbling on some more stuff, but for now I got to keep on doing what I'm doing, you know?
Hey, good for you. You've got the collection. You just got to breed it all.
That's it. Just got to keep up, man. But, well, Benjamin, why don't you go ahead, sound us out?
All right. So Ike, it's been really fun. Actually, I think that we figured out the technical stuff, maybe not as early as we should have, but once we did, I think it's been working out great. And it's been a pleasure having you on. It's always fun. Really digging your rainbow bows. I mean, it's just, you got some great stuff going on there. I think that's going to be real big. So keep us in the loop for that, and hit us up, when you guys obviously are having a little love connection, and Dave has that effect on people. So, but so thank you guys so much for listening, and Ike for being on. Make sure you guys are following us on Instagram, Facebook, and hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button on Herp House Rock. Yeah, your links will be in the description for sure down below. So thank you guys so much for listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Ike, and have a good night.
Thanks a lot. You guys take care.